Hi everybody, parents, grandparents, caregivers. Welcome to this very important free video workshop that's going to help you educate yourself and others on the importance of properly supervising kids online. It's a topic that is even more relevant given what's happening with this global pandemic around the world. My name is Cheryl Wiedmark. I am Marketing Director at Into Communications, a digital marketing agency that's located in London, Ontario, Canada. And joining me, I have three wonderful guests. We have Charlene Doak-Gebauer, founder and chair of Internet Sense First and AICET Council, which we will talk about coming up in a few seconds. We also have Jeremy Spence, who is a retired detective sergeant within the Child Sexual Exploitation Unit and was there for 13 years. And then we have Holly Dowling, who is a global motivational speaker and thought leader. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. Some of the things that we're going to be covering, just to give everybody kind of a bit of perspective on the agenda, we're going to talk about what digital supervision is. That is the overall umbrella and topic that we're going to be diving into today. What parents are liable for when it comes to their kids being online. What are some of the vulnerabilities that kids specifically now, since they're probably online more, are dealing with? And also, what are police doing now and how serious of an issue is this? We're going to be discussing why now is actually a time to be optimistic about the situation. And we're also going to talk about strategies for parents on how to handle supervising their children at home right now when they're online. So first, Charlene, I want to start with you. I think it makes sense, of course, to talk a little bit about AICET Council, Internet Sense First, what it is that you do and how this group of wonderful people came together today.
Well, I started Internet Sense First with the idea of protecting children online. And eventually we had a summit in November, Anti-Internet Child Exploitation Summit. And AICET was born from that. And AICET stands for the Anti-Internet Child Exploitation Team. Very fortunate to have a number of the speakers that were in the summit, and Holly and Jeremy are two of them. And we were going to be traveling, and will be, once this is over, let's be optimistic, this will end. We will be traveling and talking about internet child exploitation and how to protect our children online and the need to do that. And that's what AICET Council is all about.
So then, Charlene, Internet Sense First it's a global Canadian charity. So what's some of the work that you guys are doing there?
Well, I think the better term, so people aren't confused, would be federal Canadian charity. We have two main objectives. One is to educate about the internet and internet child exploitation and how to protect our children. Our other objective is to raise money for the therapy for victims. And I want to make this clear, this video is not for raising money. Mm-hmm. It is to inform. It is free. People are strapped anyway, but they are the objectives of the charity.
Okay, so let's get into some of the stuff that parents need to be aware of. And the whole reason that we're doing this is to educate parents, caregivers, grandparents, even kids, older kids for that matter. So when we use the term digital supervision, what does that actually mean, Charlene?
Well, digital supervision is a term that I created as a computer specialist network administrator in education. And I came to the realization through personal experience and professional experience that children need to be supervised online. And that doesn't mean just simple rules. That means actually supervising what they are doing on the digital devices. There is a big difference. And I divided digital supervision into three areas. Awareness, what is going on out there, because without awareness, people are not going to think it's necessary. Method, how can we supervise our children online? And hope, we can do this. We as adults can do this to protect our children. So it's awareness, method, and hope, and that's digital supervision.
Okay, we'll get into a little bit more about tactics that parents can follow, but first we want to talk about what things are actually really like out there. So I'm going to throw things over to you, Jeremy. And from a policing perspective, what is being done? And I guess also, how bad are things out there when it comes to what's happening with children and being vulnerable online?
Well, I can say, obviously I'm retired and I worked at that office for 13 years, I can tell you nothing has changed in regards to how, the people in the unit are doing their jobs. The children are on the upfront, are, put forward. They're always going to be there to assist, to investigate. Nothing will stop. Like, we're not going to say we're not investigating any offenses against children now because of this pandemic, but it will continue. The only thing I could see maybe happening is if things do get worse out there, maybe some of the officers in that unit will be strapped more with work because some of the resources may have to go to the front lines. And that's the speculation that I have. But at no time will any child be at risk if something was to happen on the internet.
So when we talk about something happening and we talk about protecting kids, what are we protecting them from? And what are these things that are happening potentially? Well,
how I see it is, we have a lot of people in isolation. We have schools that are not in. Children are at home many hours a day, obviously, and maybe unsupervised. They may be on their devices, on the internet. They may be exploring various different chat rooms, places they haven't been before, striking up conversations with people they don't know. Obviously, all of this could lead to dangerous activities. I'm not saying the internet is a bad place, but obviously some things can go wrong. I ask parents, monitor your children online, know what they're doing. Don't, leave them for hours on their devices. Keep checking in with them. I don't know. I like what I believe. I think, there unfortunately are going to be children out there that are going to need the police's help in regards to the exploitation online because of the isolation, not being in school, the amount of time that they're on their devices.
So what are some of the liabilities of parents? Like, I don't think a lot of parents realize that whatever happens on their devices that they technically own, or whatever happens with their children that they're responsible for, they are liable also at the same time. So what does that look like when we talk about liabilities?
Well, I can't really comment on the liability part of it. I would look at it more as, think about your child and what dangers could be your child. I've done many cases over the years where children have been caught up in online chats, etc., with predators that they can't get out of. The liability side of it, I would put aside. I would think more of, looking at children, the parents, and making sure they're safe online. I think the bottom line, and I know Charlene can speak to that further about the digital supervision, but it's about knowing what your child's doing online. The liability side of it, I don't know, I have trouble answering that part of it because, you have to understand that I've had investigations with 8-year-olds, with 9-year-olds, 7-year-olds. The big trend that I found just prior to leaving was YouTube videos. I really recommend parents, if your child, I found it more with 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds that they were on YouTube self-exploitating. Find out if your child has a YouTube account. What are they doing on their YouTube account? What are they broadcasting? Who are they broadcasting to? What are the people who are watching this? Those are all things that I can pass on to the parents.
Okay, Jeremy, thank you. And we're going to turn things over to Holly for a couple questions, because Holly's our little dose of sunshine, as I like to say, in this conversation, because it does sound like everything that we're saying is so negative. But given the seriousness of this issue and everything that is going around with this pandemic, what types of safe activities, Holly, do you think that parents can provide for their children, and things that are uplifting and things that are positive?
Oh, and I love that we're going there. And I just have to say that I've been actually interviewing people around that exact topic. And because I'm so passionate right now about serving and supporting parents that are stuck at home, that are working from home, and now have to have children at home. So I've been asking parents, what are you doing? And I want to share some really great things that people are actually starting to do. I would say number one is have consistent, regular schedules aligned where your children know. So I interviewed one couple, and every morning for breakfast, one of the children get to plan what they're having, and then mom or dad shows up as their favorite cartoon character. They just come in, right? And the kids have a place to be, to look forward to in the morning. Every day at 3 o'clock, another family, they're planning, everybody stops and they're going on a scavenger hunt, a treasure hunt. They're bundling up outside and just taking a walk, and the kids carry their little treasure box. I know that sounds simple, and yet people don't think about these things. Children need consistent, and one of the greatest miracles, and I'm gonna call it in this mess right now, is that parents, you're given an opportunity to have time with your children. Don't miss out. It is a right, beautiful, sacred time to see an opportunity to spend more time. Give them projects. Another family I interviewed, you're gonna love this, 2-year-old and 6-year-old, they go collect rocks when they're on their scavenger hunt, and then they get to plan what they're gonna paint them with. And every day they get to paint their rocks. I mean, this doesn't take money.
Yeah.
It just takes being committed and having consistent, regular activities that your children can look forward to, because you're helping them do it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Holly. And as a parent who has a 9-year-old home with me every day, plus working full time, it takes a little bit of patience, or maybe a lot of patience, but definitely treasuring those moments. So Charlene, I want to ask you as a parent, like, you know, my child's online sometimes, and I want to talk to you about some signals or some ways that parents might be able to identify whether their child is having negative online conversations or interactions. Like, how would a parent know if something's happening if they're not sitting there watching them all the time?
A lot depends on changes in behavior. Certainly, if you have open communication with your children, it makes it easier, but does it? I know I was a high school teacher, and children tend to brush things off with their parents because they might get in trouble. If for some reason they get on a porn site, a child will feel really bad about it. They know it's not the right thing to do. Open up the communications with your children that they can talk about that. The other thing is that there are unknown predators, but in this time, with children communicating online and not in school, there could be peer victimizers, and that will escalate as well, which is unfortunate. Once people start being enclosed in their environments for too long, an awful lot of emotions are going to surface. Mm-hmm. And just be mindful of that, because once the child's behavior changes, they may become more withdrawn, they may be a little more aggressive. Talk to them. Ask them what's going on. That's so important. And one other thing that I would suggest, I always suggest with digital supervision, that parents have a digital device use contract. Now is the time to start doing that as well. Have your children a part of designing that contract. Do not let them go through the night on these devices. Look at what they're doing on them. Check the browsers. See where they've been, because that contract makes it so that the children have input as well, so there's a choice. And when there are choices, children tend to buy into it more. They will produce that, and then they will have a part in it, their own protection, which is so positive for a child and a family to do that.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So then I wanted to ask you, Charlene, about like some methods that parents can use to better equip them for being more responsible when it comes to supervising their kids.
There is a lot. The one thing that I do talk about is turning the router off at night. And digital supervision is very user-friendly because you can program a router to turn off, but most people, a switch is much easier. That's the user-friendly method. If you have extra cable, try to put it in your bedroom. Turn it off so that the child is not tempted. Dock the cell phones at night. Make sure they're in the parental bedroom so that people are not on their cell phones. Check the pictures on the cell phones. What pictures do your children have? Can you see if they are doing, as Jeremy said, self-exploitive pictures? Are they taking nudes of themselves? That's the huge thing with children these days. And when they have all this time, that type of behavior can escalate. Don't let them take their cell phones into a bathroom. Keep them out of the bedrooms. Keep everything in a common area. They're the basic types of things that we can do for digital supervision.
Mm-hmm. Charlene, thank you. We'll get back to you in a second. Jeremy, what would be your advice from a, you know, policing community and having worked in the unit for so many years, what's your advice for parents right now, given the circumstances and given the fact that their kids are probably online a lot more than they were before?
You know, like, I guess we're echoing, because it's so important, like Charlene said, to keep that open dialogue with your children and be up, you know, have that conversation, that open conversation in regards to what they're doing online. My advice is to know what your child is doing online. Look at their phones, look at the pictures that they're taking, who are they communicating with, what apps do they have on their phone. There's so many resources out there, and I'm sure Charlene can give you quite a few that can help parents, you know, assist them with digital supervision. Exactly what we've been talking about all along here. My advice is to talk to your children and know what they're doing online. And with the isolation that's happening now, and obviously with what's happened in the world, it could make it worse here. And there'll be more people inside. And just don't leave your child unattended for hours and hours and hours with their cell phone or their device, their iPad. And keep in mind too, like, and I talk about this when I instructed before, is that, you know, a parent will throw a child an iPod and they think, oh, it's just an iPod. But an iPod is a computer. And a computer can do exactly what your cell phone can do, your iPad can do, your laptop can do. So just think about it. You know, the parents, think about, what is my child doing online right now? What sites are they going to? Who are they communicating with? And if you can, have a look at their phone. Find out. You know, safety, obviously, because sometimes your child will get trapped in unfortunate conversations with people who are out there that are predators.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. What do you think is a healthy amount of time? This is probably varies from person to person, but in your opinion, what is a healthy amount of time that a child should be, or I guess could be online, like in a day?
That's a tough question. That's a tough question, because I've got, you know, my wife and I have 7 teenagers, or not, well, 7 young adults between us, and 4 of them are under the age of 20, and they're on their phones quite extensively. And, you know, you keep telling them, but they're young adults. If I had a younger child, I would be limited to a certain amount of time, exactly how Charlene said, maybe turn the router off at night, stopping them to have that communication at night, especially at night when they're sleeping. They could be up all night talking. We don't know.
That's true.
And again, I think it goes between parents. You know your child best. And if it's open and you say, hey, Mom, I'm playing a game right now, and you know that game, and they've been playing it for maybe a couple of hours, maybe that's acceptable. But then in another home, it may not be acceptable. So I couldn't give an exact time, but obviously limit it to what, like, you think is normal as a parent. And again, unfortunately, some parents are going to think 24/7 is normal, and I don't think that is.
Right. And also what I'm aware of too, and now we don't really have this problem because our children can't really go from house to house, but when they're not in your eyesight and you're not responsible for them, you don't know what other parents' rules are. And so I'm always more afraid when my child goes to someone's house for a play date, let's say, because I don't know if they have the same rules that I have. And Charlene, I don't know, like, if this is a conversation that parents should be having with other parents when their kids are in their care.
Absolutely, they should. And thank goodness for self-isolation, not thank goodness, but the play dates don't exist right now.
Right, that's one thing.
So it's time, and it's time for parents, it's giving them time to learn more about this. For an example, I had one parent purchase my book about digital supervision and purchase 6 more for the parents of their children's friends, so that when they went to someone else's house, they would have the same types of awareness and rules in those homes. And I think to work as a team effort with parents, other parents, is very important, because then you know that your children aren't viewing porn with the permission of another parent. And another situation is with self-isolation and so on, is parents with shared custody of their children. And how is this going to be a team effort with the other family? That's a very good question and a good point, because if we're all on the same page with digital supervision, then we don't need to worry too much about our children going elsewhere. And just before this started, the Canadian government is actually, some MPs are going to bring up digital supervision in the House of Commons, because they are starting to become alert to this situation and talk to the House of Commons about digital supervision. And with self-isolation, it's good that we can start thinking about this and have the time to do it.
Yeah,
it's good for our children.
This is actually a good time for parents to take, which is why we're doing this exact webinar workshop right now, is because this is the time when parents do have, you know, that one-on-one time with their kids, and they can actually implement the right strategies. Right. So Charlene, like, I know you don't like to talk about this, but you actually wrote a fantastic book, and it goes through in detail the method that parents can do, like a proven method on how to properly supervise your kids. So if people want to learn more about that, we of course encourage people to read that.
Yes, it's called The Internet, Our Children in Charge, and this is the book. I don't know if you can get it on Amazon right now, if Amazon is working, but it is a book, and a portion of the proceeds goes towards victims of Internet Child Exploitation. I wrote it for that purpose. I want to make a difference for these children. And with this COVID-19, this to me is even more in the forefront. And I'm so grateful that Cheryl initiated this, and that Jeremy and Holly are willing participants, because we all see the magnitude of what can happen. And I don't want parents upset. Goodness knows we're worried about the COVID-19 anyway. But when this is all said and done, anything that happens now can live with someone forever. Yeah. So let's just be positive. Let's get on it. We have the time, and look after one section of our lives that that can be looked after while we're off and self-isolating.
For sure. So Holly, I want to end things on a positive note with you. And what do you think that parents should do or can do? I know you gave us a couple of ideas, but to keep children away from TV broadcasts about the virus, like that's what I find. I often have, you know, CTV or CBC on in the background, and I'm not realizing that even though my kid's not necessarily paying attention to it, they hear things. The last thing I want is for them or any child to be scared. So how do you recommend having those conversations, and what to do when that happens to just be the reality that we're watching the news?
Well, and I have to say, Cheryl, I'm really glad you asked that, because right now I have a lot of parents reaching out to me saying, my kids are in a panic, they're freaking out. And my first answer is always going to be, you are role modeling how your children are experiencing this time in our life. So it is more important than ever that parents get an accountability and take a look in the mirror and realize everything you're doing is mirroring and having a ripple effect on how your children are seeing this experience. So for number one, I would absolutely be 100% against having any of this news and stuff going on throughout the house all day long. I know if a parent wants to stay abreast of it, you can go online and figure out what's going on, but keep your children only have a capacity. Remember, their brains only develop. You know, the synaptics in the brain by the age of 16 are developed, but then they keep growing. And the reality is children experience fear in a whole different place than we do. So we as parents and guardians, and even if you don't have children in your home, but you are an uncle, an aunt, a grandparent, we are responsible for how they are experiencing this time. So to me, it's utterly important that we are not like freaking them out, and that we are owning that this is also a time that we can build our greatest resilience. And your children can be a part of figuring out what resilience looks like for them. And I want to go back to Jeremy and Charlene for a minute, because I think they hit on something, Cheryl, that is a wonderful tool that parents could walk away with starting right now after they listen to this. So we take the contract idea, and I love that children and parents can create a contract together. And back to the question to Jeremy about what's a healthy amount of time for kids to be online? Well, why don't you as a parent and your children create a contract that every day, this is how much time they have, and they track it. And once you make your children feel accountable and you're not mandating, but they're a part of that solution, they will be far more apt to saying, here's where I've tracked my time. This is how much time I've spent. And another tool that another parent I interviewed the other day, because of the isolation and the children not getting play dates, this one couple, every day, twice a day, they do what we're doing right now. They let their son get on Zoom and they've connected with the other parents, and the kids have a play date virtually, but they're seeing all their faces. So for those people that are wondering who your children are communicating with, you can see 30 kids' faces all connecting, or 12. And now I guess you can do that on Facebook group chats. So parents, it's time to institute and put into place different ways of letting your children connect. And that way they're not online and you're wondering what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we could spend hours talking about this. And I'm very passionate about it too, with each of us having a different lens.
Well, this is just part one. We should, we should continue doing other, segments and ask the viewers what they want to hear about. I know my son was actually invited to a virtual birthday party yesterday. And there was 15 kids on the screen, and I'm like, how is this going to go? But you know what? Like, they just made noises for 20 minutes. They didn't even talk. They made noises.
Beautiful.
So,
beautiful. Yeah.
And I have another friend of mine that for every minute that their child wants to be gaming or wants to be online, they have to do a physical activity. So they'll make their kid run around the block for 30 minutes if they want 30 minutes of game time, or make them, work out in the garage or something like that. Like they have to earn it.
I love that.
Yeah.
And Cheryl, and I just have to add, because you said the virtual, our family is throwing a surprise virtual party for our nephew, and we're all doing it. He has no idea. So there's ways to have a lot of fun during this time and build really beautiful relationships with loved ones that we seem to always be too busy to take the time. So
yeah, that is true. That is true. Well, I just want to say, Charlene, Jeremy, Holly, thank you so much. It was so great to connect with you guys virtually, and I really appreciate your tremendous knowledge. I know as a parent, it's really hard working full time, supervising your child, making sure they're not doing anything that they shouldn't be. If anyone does have any specific questions, comments, anything like that they'd like to hear about, comment below. You could also email Charlene or look up Internet Sense First online and contact her that way, because we'd like to potentially do more of these. And remember to check out internetsensefirst.com. There's more information on there. You can find out how to get Charlene's book if you're interested, and check back here often. We're going to continue to try and equip everybody with the tools that they need to get through this together as a group, as parents, as a community. So thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.